Welcome to Milestone Moments, the show where we explore the journeys that lead to success. I'm Sheila Slick, your host and founder of 5 Milestones. In every episode, we will bring you insights from the minds of entrepreneurs, leaders, and experts who will share not just their expertise, but the milestone moments that have reshaped their journeys and led to significant achievements. So if you're looking for motivation, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and discover the milestones that mark the path to success. Welcome to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. I'm Sheila Slick, your host. And today, my special guest is Ranasinha. G has been in marketing since the days of dial-up internet and AOL. Today, he's the CEO of Kexino, an award-winning marketing agency. Over the past 16 years, Kexino has helped over 400 startups and small businesses in around 20 countries grow awareness, reputation, trust, and most importantly, sales. A fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, G is also a visiting professor at 2 business schools where he teaches marketing and behavioral economics to final year MBA students. Outside of work, G loves to cook, listens to music, and plays jazz piano. Well, he wrote very badly, but let's just leave it at plays jazz piano. Welcome to the show, G.
What can I say? You haven't heard me play, so the jury's still out. But trust me, because I don't get very much time to play nowadays. I'm extremely rusty. But what I fail in technique, I make up in enthusiasm. But thank you very much for inviting me on your show. I do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining me. I do love to motivate people and have them believe in themselves. And if that's your creative way, of releasing all of that energy, kudos to you. So don't focus so much on, the perfection of it, just the progress.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I'd like you to take us back to a moment in your story, perhaps a challenge or a bold choice that led you to where you are and shaped how you approach leadership and marketing today.
Well, I think I can tell you a story which basically was the birth of the agency. So we have to go back to my previous role where I was the worldwide director of marketing for a software company. And the software company was serving blue chip clients such as IKEA, Nestle, Airbus, Marvel, big ticket names. So I was there for 7 years, and as the worldwide director of marketing, I was inviting marketing agencies to come in and pitch for a business. And after a while, it occurred to me that none of them would take any kind of fiduciary responsibility for the marketing plans that they were proposing. Okay, all the agencies I spoke with were more interested in the tactical stuff, web design, ads, events, PR, and all that sort of stuff. Okay, nobody was actually asking me about the business result on which the marketing plan was supposed to deliver on. And that's when I had my sort of light bulb moment, if you like, my aha moment. It sort of dawned on me that there must be a ton of startups and small businesses out there who needed help with marketing, but from a business perspective, designing and managing a marketing plan to generate qualified leads to ultimately produce a tangible commercial difference to their business. At the same time, we're talking about the end of 2007, beginning of 2008. So as you'll remember, that sort of time, the internet was really sort of gathering a full head of steam. It was beginning to affect our daily lives. And of course, like all of these technologies, it was the bigger brands who were the ones who were taking advantage of all the potential that the internet provided, right? Because they've got more technical resources, more experience, and obviously deeper pockets, which meant small businesses were getting left behind. If you remember, the 2007 was the year the iPhone was launched, okay? And affordable broadband was something that everyday people, normal people like you and I could sort of afford, right? So I thought that there was a perfect storm, an opportunity for a marketing resource aimed at small businesses and startups that could help them leverage the power of online engagement. So I looked around to see if there was a marketing agency that took that kind of approach, and I couldn't find one. So we started our own. At the beginning, there were three of us. So I left my cushy corporate job with all its trappings and expense accounts and company BMWs and international travel and all that sort of stuff. And we launched Casino, which is our marketing agency. As I said, it was in 2008, which you'll probably recall was not exactly the best time to start a business. Not exactly my best business decision, but with not a small amount of luck and with the support of some fantastic clients who we had at the time, we weathered the storm of the post-boom recession, and 17 plus years later, we're still here. We won a few awards. We've branched out into behavioral science, design, branding, as well as the usual tactical stuff, websites, copywriting, PR, SEO, social, video, and all that usual sort of stuff. Yeah, that was really the pivotal moment, really, to sort of get ahead, really, of where the business owners for small businesses and startups were needed to leverage that internet and cut through the disinformation and misinformation that was being spread around at the time to actually find and hone programs which were tangibly effective, right? Not generating noise and fluff and, ego-centric metrics, but things that actually move the revenue needle. Because at the end of the day, sales is what we're talking about, right? Marketing is sales. Marketing involves selling. And, if it doesn't sell anything, it's not marketing, right? It's fluff. It's just extra noise that's being added to the environment. That's where we come from. We come from a business first perspective rather than looking to shoehorn existing cookie cutter approaches into an organization's business growth plans. Sorry for the long answer there. It wasn't too long.
No problem. So since you work a lot with startups and small businesses, going back to how you were in corporate in a nice cushy job and then went out on your own, what advice would you give to someone today that's in that position? They're in corporate and they want to step out and do their own business or their own startup.
Right. Be careful of what you wish for. I remember, I think it was something that you said in one of your podcasts, like 99% of entrepreneurs actually go back to their a corporate environment. You said that on a podcast or an article. I remember reading that. Entrepreneurship is a very different position from being a salaried employee. You never switch off. It takes a very certain type of personality. It's a very lonely endeavor. Even if you go into partnership with someone, there are things that you can and can't confide in with people. And the amount of self-discipline required cannot be underestimated. So yes, obviously the other side of the coin is very attractive. What's missing is that, when you're in your corporate job, whether you bust your balls to work as hard as you can. Sorry, I didn't check whether colourful language was appropriate for this podcast. I apologize if I've overstepped the mark. Sorry, I normally check these things in advance. But yes, whether you bust a gut working as hard as you can for 20 odd days of the month, or whether you sit back with your feet on the desk for all of that time, you still get your salary check at the end of the month. That safety net is instantly removed when you go out on your own. It's sink or swim time. So you need to be physically and mentally prepared for that, and not to underestimate the physical demands that it imposes on business owners. A business owner of any size, whether you're talking about a startup, small business, or if you're buying an existing organization, it doesn't really matter. The amount of energy required is substantial.
Well, I agree with you with the self-discipline. It's required. So
it's not optional, is it?
No, it's not. But, being an entrepreneur, And, the isolation, there's different ways around it as well. You can find support in communities, perhaps a partner as well, although you said sometimes it still feels lonely. I've worked with family, I've worked on my own, and each experience has been quite different. But no matter whom I've worked with, even if alone, you always need, your pillars of support because it's really hard to make decisions sometimes alone.
There's
Yeah.
no such thing as a self-made successful business owner. There's no such thing as a self-made business owner. Every single business owner on the planet is standing on the shoulders of giants, right? There is a support network in there that help them get to where they are. And anybody who says that they're self-made is deluded as far as I'm concerned, because you can't make it on your own. And you're really in a state of delusion if you think you can or you have.
One of my guests previously, he had brought up a great point that with AI, and I haven't even finished asking you the questions with the AI, but that with the AI, there's going to be a lot more solopreneurs moving forward because they're able to use AI for a lot of different tasks. And we'll come up to a question with the AI, but that led me thinking, wow, with AI, if entrepreneurs are able to leverage it, then they're not even going to need that big of a team. So he firmly believed that solopreneurship was where we're heading in terms of entrepreneurship. So in your writing, because I did enjoy reading a lot of your blogs that you have in your website, they had a whole different angle to marketing. I enjoyed some of them. One of them was the dark side of marketing, how people sometimes don't share in public. And so how do you measure that metric? But the one that really caught my attention was one that talks about seeking consensus, that can stifle innovation. And it points out that with strong leadership and unconventional thinking, those are the two things that drive real change. So looking back on your journey, what moment in your history, in your story, have you had to push against, conventional thinking or conventional wisdom to be able to shape an innovative approach to marketing?
We were working with a client a few years ago now, client based in Atlanta. And they are a company that does menu boxes. If you know what a menu box is, you subscribe to a website, and every week, day, 2 weeks, whatever you want, they'll send you a box full of chilled, fresh ingredients and a preparation card to enable you to make a delicious, nutritious, home-cooked meal at home, okay? So you don't have to buy anything. You've got all the ingredients in the box. You just need to add salt and pepper. All the spices and seasonings and proteins and vegetables and carbohydrates and all that stuff are all in the box. Okay, so it's very easy, okay? So for people who are time short, don't have time to cook, or don't have time to shop for a week or even for a couple of days, the stuff arrives. None of the meals take longer than 20 minutes to make. Okay, but it stops you buying takeout and just being, going down that road. So this company had been doing this for a while and they'd been pretty successful, but they'd sort of hit a ceiling in terms of sales, and they couldn't really move to the next level. They also looked at where their existing market was and the ICP, the ideal customer profile. The ideal customer profile is as an archetype of the most likely profile of person who is going to be receptive for whatever you're trying to sell. So they identified a number of different ICPs, in terms of demographics, ethnographics, age, social class, whatever it may be. And they were hitting a bit of a ceiling, and they wanted to expand because their ICPs were generally in a similar sort of age group, from mid-20s up to about mid-30s in age. And what they wanted to do was to get to an older generation of people, specifically over 50s, because they thought of people who were either newly single for whatever reason, where cooking for one was a bit of a pain because of the economies of scale that you get if you're cooking for 2, 3, or 4. But none of the marketing work that they were doing seemed to resonate with that particular type of audience profile. They were doing a lot of digital advertising. They were doing a lot of inbound stuff, but nothing was working. So we had a look at the problem. We did a lot of customer research. We did a couple of focus groups. And I remember having the first conversation I had with the marketing director of this company. And I said what we needed to do, or what we needed to at least test, was communication via snail mail, direct mail, USPS mail. And seriously, Sheila, you should have seen her face. She was like, what? It was like I was suggesting bringing back dinosaurs or something. It was like, you're kidding, right? And I said, no, seriously. The thing is about printed direct mail is, number one, we don't get very much of it anymore. Remember the days when we used to get tons of this stuff filling up our mailboxes, our physical mailboxes? Nowadays, not so much, especially if it's personally addressed to us. The other thing is, if it's personally addressed to us, unlike any form of electronic communication, there is pretty much a 100% open rate to success. You get an envelope addressed to Sheila, I bet the farm that you're going to open that envelope. Now, you may throw it in the bin straight after because you found out, it's a bit of spam or whatever else, but you will open it. Yet how many times have you got an email and just by looking at the sender who you've never heard of, or just by looking at the subject line, you know that this is just spam, and you delete it without even reading it? Also, people of a certain age, and I'll include myself in that group. I wouldn't dare include anybody else on this call, but I'll certainly include myself in this age group, grew up with snail mail. And there is a familiarity with that form of communication, which perhaps doesn't exist with people who are younger. It's a thing called costly signaling. So what that means is the very fact that I've actually spent money by communicating with you through a particular channel lends additional gravitas to the veracity of that communication. In other words, if I advertise a bunch of steak knives for $50 online, you have one perception of the quality of those steak knives. But if I take out an ad for a 48-sheet billboard poster for the same steak knives, you have a different perception of the quality of those steak knives because of costly signaling. Because you think, well, these knives must be good, because if they weren't, then this company would not put their money where their mouth is, right? They've got skin in the game to actually spend money on advertising, which I don't know how much it is, but I know it's certainly more than putting an ad on Facebook or Instagram or something. Do you see what I mean? So the very fact that somebody's taken the time to find out your name and print it out onto a piece of paper, fold that piece of paper into an envelope, address that envelope and stick it in the post, gives additional credence, additional authenticity, additional trust signals to the recipient. So I explained all of this to the marketing director of this food box company, and she wasn't having any of it. And it took 2 or 3 conversations before eventually she said, okay, good grief. She waved the white flag and said, okay, let's do a test. We'll pick a couple of zip codes and we'll do a test and we'll compare it to zip codes where we didn't do the mail drop, and we'll see what happened. Long story short, what happened? 34% uptick in sales compared to any campaign they'd ever done ever. Not just for the target demographic. They ran it 2 or 3 times afterwards and it was still well into double-digit growth compared to anything they've done before. So just by thinking irrationally, illogically, but thinking from a behavioral standpoint about what will react favorably with the customer, they were able to buck the trend of their industry and in their category and realize over and above sales targets for any of their competitors. Now, I'm not saying that the answer to your problems is to do a mail drop. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is unconventional thinking sometimes gives you the answers to your problems, because if you lose purely logical, pragmatic thinking, you will only get one particular solution set. And that's the same solution set that your competitors are going to arrive at, because we're all thinking logically and rationally. But logical and rationally doesn't mean you're going to get to the right answer, whatever the right answer may be. Because as human beings, we are not logical and rational people. We're beings, okay? We don't operate, we don't function predictably, logically, and rationally. Our predisposition is emotional and contextual. We can change our decision-making process based upon the context of what that decision is made, as well as our emotional state at that particular time. And I defy anybody to disagree with me on that. We have all bought something for reasons that are emotionally based as opposed to reason, rationality, or logic. Now, we'll tell ourselves a story after the fact. We need to have that narrative to go with that. But anything we buy, whether it's a home or whether it's a pair of socks, anything in between, we buy here. We buy from the heart, and we post-rationalize logically. We tell ourselves a story to justify the purchase and reassure our mind that we haven't made an unwise purchase. Sorry, that's another very long answer for a very
That's called buyer's remorse.
Right. If we tell ourselves a story and we believe it, then we keep it. If we can't, then we're down to the store and we're getting a return.
Well, I love that you brought back what some may consider the dinosaur times, right, of print. But I think the real lesson behind that is that your company also did all of these focus groups. And whether you do it in polls or you did them in person, you took the time to ask the very segment of people that you wanted to target what they thought. And that helped you come up with what you're calling, or perhaps that business owner was calling, out of this world or irrational. But I want to bring you now back to the future and talk about that AI, because you have been in marketing, you have a lot of experience. And I know that when we even use the words dial up internet, some people perhaps can't comprehend that it was a line that you had to plug into a wall and it made a phone call and then it made some screeching noises, before
we all remember that music, don't we? Absolutely.
But now you're navigating the rise of AI in the industry. And you're probably not just reacting to trends, but you're anticipating them so that you can stay sharp. So what's one thing that you're doing that's shaping how you're approaching using AI to lead Kexino today and moving forward? So
I'm probably going to piss off a few people now. 90% of the claims which are made by AI devotees today are absolute BS and do not stand up to any form of in-depth scrutiny. We've all seen the images and videos that have been 100% AI driven, even from very large agencies, even from very large brands. But none of them stand up to further scrutiny, because all we're talking about is production, and we're not talking about ideation. We're not talking about creativity. We're not talking about making those strategic decisions which AI today, and only today, cannot do. What we are doing is an industry, the marketing industry, the advertising industry, because that's the only industries that I can speak of, right? Is we are trying to fit AI into solving problems which AI is not very good at solving. Instead of using AI to solve problems that AI is actually very good at solving. AI doesn't have taste. It doesn't have creativity. It doesn't know when it's wrong. But we as human beings, even if we think we don't have a creative bone in our body, we can look at a piece of writing, as an image, at a video, and something doesn't smell right. Okay? AI doesn't have that arbiter to be able to make the distinction. So the idea of a solopreneur using a bunch of AI tools to fill in the gaps for work is perfectly possible, and there may well be the first unicorn organization, $1 billion valued company, which consists of one person. Maybe there will be. But the idea that the AI will be able to think, to be able to make emotional, taste-based, experiential type decisions is for the birds. Yes, it will do tasks, but it needs to be prompted. And we've all played around with AI, put a prompt in, and got an absolute pile of cat vomit coming out of the other end because we don't know what we're doing, right? Like the old acronym is garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what you're doing at the front, then you know what you're going to get at the back. This is the issue. So we're already seeing it in the advertising industry where certain businesses are producing like 500 ads with 500 types of creative, 500 headlines, 500 bits of copy, throwing it into a digital ad platform, leaving the platform itself to find the audience. We're not even doing the customer targeting stuff. We're leaving it up to the algorithms to do that. And then measuring whatever ad gives like 0.001% better uplift compared to the rest, and then doubling down on those ads. And we're forgetting about the 99% of people who've seen the crud ads before they actually see the good. I'm using that in a relative term, of course, ad. So we're pissing off 90% of our target market in order to get a algorithm-based result, which is still not going to be as effective as something that was produced by somebody who's had experience or education in the subject matter. AI would never come up with, I'm loving it. AI could never come up with, just do it. AI would never come up with, think different, right? It could do the poster, and it could make it according to printing specs or banner specs and all the rest of it. But, that's further downstream. That's production stuff. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the strategy stuff, in the stuff that, like I said, we all buy emotionally and then post-rationalize logically. So any form, you look at any ad that you can remember, or any memory that you've got throughout your life, every single one of those memories is underpinned by a strong emotional force. It could be happiness, it could be sadness, it could be anger, it could be fear, it could be anything. There's positive emotions as well as negative. But it's the emotion that creates the hook to form those memory structures in our brain. Every January, Super Bowl time, we all go through and we look at the Super Bowl ads and we talk about the Super Bowl ads that we remember. What are the ones we remember? The ones that stand out because they're funny, or because they make us think, they create pathos, or they create nostalgia, or whatever it is. These are all emotions, Sheila. It's not a question of sticking an ad and putting a bunch of bullet points on there. No one's going to remember that, are they? So pulling those emotional levers in order to create, like I said, these mental structures is paramount to anything we do from a marketing perspective. Now, to help do that from a production side, AI can do lots of things. if we're looking at making sense of large amounts of data to actually look at trends and nuances and find out exactly where there are tangible commercial opportunities by sorting through data. AI loves that sort of stuff, and it does a great job doing it. But for some reason, AI has become a proxy for cheaper and faster rather than better. And we should be using it to augment our services so that we can reach ever greater heights of performance rather than a race to the bottom where we're just trying to do something faster and cheaper and get ever decreasing results. I don't want to come across as a Luddite here, okay? AI can do lots of really cool stuff, but we're not pushing it in that direction for some reason. We're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and I don't quite know why. Because it's really good at certain things, and it's really crap at other things, and we're just trying to make it do the crap stuff rather than make it do the good stuff. It's great to be able to look at figuratively or legitimately. You don't have to stare at a blank page anymore, right? You can cut, it's the hardest thing in the world is to stare at a blank page and think, okay, where do we go, right? So from an ideation perspective, having a stick in the ground, figuratively speaking, that we can work around is fantastic. But we need to remember to take into consideration that the conversation is taking place based on previous existing ideas. So the chance that we'll hit something fresh and original using AI prompts is infinitesimally small. Okay? So I think it'll fuel more mediocre work because if you're using AI to create, you're just combining ideas from what's already there. Okay? So until AI has emotional intelligence, it's incapable of creating something on its own. It's a curator. Okay? Not a creator. Okay? So all of that boring, non-creative, repetitive stuff should definitely be thrown at AI. Okay? Most of the performance marketing stuff, the pragmatic style ads, banner ads, A/B testing, rationality-based copywriting, things like features and colors and availability and all that stuff. All the basic, what I call grunt work, the test and learn work, the stuff we used to give to interns. AI can do all of that stuff, and it can do it far better than a human being. Where it gets interesting is where it can do things that humans either can't do quickly or can't do at all. So like I said, gathering data, working with what-if models around that data, link all the moving parts together and help us with strategic planning. For example, the ability to gather what we call in marketing category entry points. Okay. Basically, to create more detailed market segmentation, identify the optimum positioning strategy, build funnels, work out the best leverage points, recommend new product development ideas, that sort of stuff. And then you can imagine taking all of those things together that have been created virtually instantaneously and having them all speak to each other to identify the optimum strategy for our business in the next 6, 12, 24, 36 months, And we can run a gazillion scenarios where we can change variables, objectives, pricing, distribution, ad spend, whatever, and model those possibilities and work out the best one and review it every year, month, every day, if you want, So AI can connect the dots and spot trends and augment what marketing teams are already doing, creating private GPTs around our own particular business, our own particular market, all of that customer-facing messaging that our businesses have created, our financials, our reporting, our research, our presentations, everything. It's like your second brain to help you anticipate trends and that sort of thing. But for creative execution, for the principles of behavioral optimization, AI sucks. It's not even close to being there. But all of this stuff I've just said, it excels at, and we should be doing much more of that. And that's really where the opportunity exists within the marketing and advertising sphere.
So what is your next milestone?
I've been teaching for a long time. I'm a visiting professor, so I'm a part-timer. At the end of last year, I was invited to speak at a conference in Copenhagen in Denmark. And I hadn't done any public speaking for a long time, excusing the stuff I'm doing at university because it's not really public speaking in the same way, right? And I got a really good feedback. The organizers were blown off their chairs. They weren't expecting as positive a feedback as they got. And I've heard this over the years, but I've never taken it very seriously. But I'm actually going to give a good go in seeing whether I can secure more public speaking opportunities, because people who know about these things and are looking at it a lot more objectively and pragmatically, which I can't because I'm looking at everything from an inch from my nose, right? Think that I can actually command some kind of presence within a room. That's my next mountain to climb, to see whether I've actually got what it takes. But that's what I'm going to give a go anyway.
But I think you got this.
It's very kind.
So thank you very much for joining me today, G.
I had a great time. I was delighted to. It was a wonderful time. I hope you and I hope your audience will enjoy our discussion today.
And I will leave all of your contact information in the notes so that anyone that wants to reach out to you or learn more about Kixino or perhaps your future speaking engagements can do so by looking in the show notes. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. Until next time.